Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Ellipse Unsealed podcast. Today we have with us a very special guest, Miss Marie Wiese. Hi, Marie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Welcome.
great.
Bobby's here all decked out in his purple gear today.
I've got the purple shirt. Oops. Yeah, there you go. Ellipse.
Yes.
There you
Like
go.
Superman.
Yeah. The Ellipse logo, one of these sides. I'm the mirror of this, camera's got me thrown off. I'm just going to point to both sides.
Yeah.
There's an Ellipse
Yes.
logo here somewhere.
Cool. Well, Marie, do you want to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are?
Sure. My name is Marie Wiese, and I am the CEO of Marketing Copilot. We are a company that helps with customer acquisition, with tech companies specifically, help them with their customer acquisition programs. And we like to say we're really good at mapping the sales process to online tactics and to the web to help companies improve revenue. And I have just recently been made a Microsoft MVP, which I'm very proud of. And I know it was a big deal. So
It's
Microsoft
awesome, yeah.
MVP. And I'm also host of a podcast called Women Talk Tech, and we like to promote gender equity in the tech sector.
Also,
And yes, thank you. And I wrote a book a couple of years ago called You Can't Be Everywhere, which was a common sense approach to digital marketing for any business. And I would have to say those are the highlights of me. I'm a very proud Canadian. I live just north of Toronto, and we've just got a lot of snow, but I'm leaving for Florida on Saturday, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see you down in Tampa, Bob.
yeah. I'm going to go back rewind. I'm so excited in the tech world. I was an end user and an IT director and did a lot of hiring. A small company, a small department, so I wasn't like hiring people, daily, but it was always, I have two daughters, so it was always painful for me to see like the glut of men that applied for tech positions. Like I would put out for either tech support or network admin. It didn't matter. There was like a token. It always seemed like it was like a token female applicant.
Yeah.
And just to see this growth in the space and the attention on the space is really warming to my heart, because I was so excited to hire and promote female in tech when I had the opportunity, to see that it just is it's really starting to gain traction. I love to see every event we do. There's always a woman in tech focus, a conference, maybe a small piece of the conference is broken off to highlight that and showcase that. So I'm excited about the work you've done there for sure.
When I started the podcast, which was about 5 years ago, and I've been the chair of tech associations, and I've been on the board of global tech associations, and I was always frustrated by the fact that there weren't enough women at the table, especially around tech that impacts all of us.
Yeah.
As a global community. And when we started the podcast, we were sitting at around 22% of women in the tech sector. We're only at about 26% right now, which
Still a lot of work.
I wish we were growing faster, but we have to keep the conversation going, and we have to get more young women to understand the importance of them coming into the tech sector and joining the tech sector.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of what I do every day.
Yep. And when you see folks like you being successful, any number of, we could just rattle off females in tech that are out there now and really promoting themselves, it makes it attainable. It's like, well, this, I see, again, it's just that age-old adage about I see myself doing this reflected in the people doing it. So that makes it easy for me to jump on, or a person to jump on and take that path. It's like, hey, I can do this. It's out there for me.
There's quite a few female MVPs now, Microsoft MVPs, and they're starting to get a really good community of us, and I'm happy about that.
That's awesome.
And I hope we will move things forward a little bit faster than we have in the last decade.
Yeah, let's hope for some exponential growth there. You bet.
And we're in the process of, we're right in the middle of writing another book. It's called You're on Mute, and it's about women's stories in the tech sector and what we need to do to maybe escalate things and make things move a little bit faster. But we've got a lot of great women contributing their stories in the conversation, and I can't wait for that to launch in October. It'll be officially released in October of this year. And I think it's going to be a great cornerstone of keeping that conversation moving along as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, that's not. I would love the title, and we'd love to have you back on. As you get closer to your launch, to promote that because it sounds like a really interesting read, and
Yeah.
a telling title because that's exactly the way I would think it feels
Yeah.
in a room. When you're
Yeah.
dominated by men and opposing voices, or not opposing, but but a minority voice that it can feel like you're on mute sometimes. So that's a
Yeah.
great. You mentioned MVP. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to mention that. Talk a little bit about Tampa. You're going to be talking about marketing very specific to Dynamics, and I assume your MVP comes through that sales and marketing channel. Is that where the MVP association is?
Well, funnily enough, I'm MVP in AI.
Okay.
So I was expecting it to be around a CRM and marketing
Yeah.
automation, but I achieved my MVP status in AI. And we worked on a product about a year ago, which we're continuing to develop around being able to use AI to determine what your value proposition is and what it should be. And when you and I met, Bobby, back in the conference in Arizona, I believe it was, and we talked then about the impact of AI and what was going to happen, the impact of AI on sales and marketing. I think sales and marketing is one of the most natural fits for AI and how that functions as you're developing email and as you're developing letters and conversation in the sales and marketing process. I think it fits really well. I still think a lot of people are struggling with it. I think a lot of people are still trying to understand when to use it, how to use it. Is it a research tool? Is it more than a research tool? That's what we had talked about back then. But I do a lot of work with organizations to help them with their CRM and to help them with marketing automation, which Microsoft in the last 12 months has taken a bit of a step back on, running hard at the marketing automation piece. They're now calling it customer insights and wrapping some of the functionality of what was a marketing automation product into customer insights as part of the CRM on Dynamics. I find all of that very interesting, and I think it's a result of Microsoft deciding where they really want to play in the space, because you've got some pretty heavy hitters like HubSpot and Salesforce that are dominating the space right now, particularly in the small business sector, around this marketing automation function. And I think Microsoft has a real opportunity right now, and I'm looking forward to them seizing that opportunity. And the way in might just be through Copilot AI.
Yeah. Yeah, you see it popping up. Like we use CE internally for our marketing, and it's Copilot is now a sidecar opportunity for us to grab insights. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just the other day I was going back. We've had a customer we've been working with, and it was fun to use it for one of the for the first time kind of in this realm, because we just got it installed not too long ago for our systems. But to say, hey, just give me a quick feedback on all the activity around this customer, and it popped up. You did this, and this. Here's this, and this. Here's some insights we found, and boom. And so definitely some value. But your point is valid in that I think I agree with you that talking to people. And Savannah and I have had a few folks on recently about AI. Just there's still a lot of uncertainty around how do I access it, how do I prompt it, how I was talking to a friend even. They were like, oh, I don't know, AI is okay. I was like, well, tell me what you did. And they're like, I did this, this, and this. And I said, okay. Did you reprompt that, or did you do any? And they're like, no, this is what I got. And I was like, well, you can actually take this, and you don't even have to plug it back in. You can just tell whether it's Copilot or if you're still using ChatGPT or Bard or whatever system. You can just say, hey, the stuff you just gave me, look at that again and do this time, or change it slightly, or reevaluate it for me, so that learning those prompts is important, and kind of getting a deeper understanding of how you can move it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as marketers specifically, we're struggling a little bit to understand where does it play a role and how does it play a role. We use it very heavily for research, and the thing that we've promoted is very much what we call hybrid intelligence.
Yeah.
And the fact that artificial intelligence is great, but if you don't have a human being who knows how to connect with another human being, driving the prompting or driving the decision around what needs to be said or what the theme is, then you're just kind of getting a lot of garbage out of it, and it's not going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
And so we just recently put a blog post. We've got a newsletter that we run on LinkedIn, and you're welcome to follow us on LinkedIn, Marketing Copilot. And we've talked about what we think are the most important tools for you to be using in 2024. And we think human relationships, we got to get back to human relationships.
Yeah.
We've all become digital natives overnight, and that's all cool because it can really escalate and speed up processes around making connections and knowing who to connect with and how to connect. But at the end of the day, human beings want to build relationships. And if those relationships aren't solid and you don't know what somebody else's value is to you, then the relationship probably won't go very far. And without that relationship, there's no amount of tools in the world can help you fix that. So we like to talk about hybrid intelligence, and hybrid intelligence very much meaning how a human being is going to use these tools to encourage relationships that help drive sales and revenue. And that, I think, at its core is what most marketers and salespeople today are struggling to get a handle on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I still feel like I can tell something that's generated straight by AI and not touched by a human afterwards. I use it for research, for some prompting, just for maybe a foundation, but I go in and put the Bobby spin on it always because it still hasn't captured my voice. And I think I can tell when it's something that's just vanilla AI, if it's out there in the world, somebody's put a blog post and I was like, oh, I can tell somebody just ripped a topic, said create this blog post and left it as is. It reads as such to me still. Like it hasn't got to the point where it's fooling me yet.
Yeah. And listen, we're human beings. We don't want to be fooled. We don't want to be hoodwinked because ChatGPT came up with a better answer than a human being could have. And, I think you're seeing a lot of this happening on LinkedIn, this cold outreach that people do on LinkedIn. And in the space of 1 week, I received 4 different connections asking me to connect using the exact same copy. 4 different companies in 4 different spaces using the exact same copy. And I thought,
interesting.
This is what's going to do us in as human beings. This is not the way to use AI.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people who are still hoping that they can cut corners and find some silver bullet. And I know you've been in the space for a long time, Bobby. And I know, Savannah, you probably have seen it as you've embarked on your career in marketing, that it is hard work to be in marketing these days. It is hard work because there's so much noise out there. There's so much clutter.
Yeah.
Really understanding your buyer and what motivates them to buy and what triggers them to choose you is a whole psychological exercise unto itself.
Yeah.
And, oftentimes marketing is the last person brought into a company. It's the place where the CFO never wants to spend money. And they don't understand the value of it because for the longest time, the things that we would do in marketing weren't attributable to data that suggested whether it was working or not working. And we've just had a lot of battles to overcome. And I think now with having marketing automation tools and being able to track from first touch point right through to closed sale, where that lead came from, how it was nurtured, how it was managed, and whether it turned into revenue or not, we're able to see better than we ever have been before. And how we arrived at making that person take action on something is really interesting now as well, and very transparent. We didn't have that for the longest time. What I used to like to call spray and pray. Find the biggest list possible and start spraying it and hope something dropped into the bucket.
Yeah.
And I think we're learning the hard way in some cases that there has to be a different approach. There has to be a different formula to getting at this. And I think it's very much about human relationships and how people react to content or raise their hand or have a trigger that triggers them to want to start the sales conversation. We have to be smarter about understanding those things.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, you're definitely right with, how much noise there is. Even today I was like scrolling through Instagram and I swear I saw like 10 different ads within like a span of like 5 minutes or something. And it's crazy how much there is out there. So yeah, you definitely have to be very intentional with what you put and who you're targeting and all of those things. So it's actually worth something than people are just like, oh, another ad,
Right.
So
Yeah. And it's, what my hero Seth Godin used to call the attention economy. And the attention economy was just trying to grab attention. And
Yeah.
attention doesn't build relationships. We all know there was that one kid in class who was always seeking attention. And, over time, he or she didn't build the relationships that other kids in the class who weren't necessarily attention seekers. But it's hard when we apply that to sales and marketing today, especially business to business marketing.
Yeah.
And we're being held accountable as sales and marketing leaders to generate qualified leads for our organizations. And the only way to really do that is to understand who's buying, why they're buying, and how to go find the right people to engage with. We went through a depressing era of generating as many MQLs as we could. As long as we were putting email addresses on a list, that seemed to be good enough. And now that's not good enough. We need to know what that person's intention is to start a sales conversation, and we need to know how to get them to that sales conversation. And so it's becoming more and more complex. It's not for the faint of heart. It's become more and more complex. And when we see tools like AI, for example, ChatGPT or Copilot AI from Microsoft coming into the space, it seems so wonderful that it's solving this wonderful problem. And at the end of the day, I think it's only creating more problems for us because we really have to figure out how to use it correctly. And, it comes right back to relationships, doesn't it?
Yeah. One thing that you guys put out that I thought was a good kind of relationship building was your newsletter about the horoscopes. I thought it was kind of a fun kind of spin to get into the Gen Z audience because I feel like they're very into that, and maybe some others as well. Do you kind of want to talk about that a little bit, or the idea behind that newsletter?
Sure. So
and I'm going to interject real quickly because I want to point out that you're calling it Deep Thoughts, which is also a throwback for oldies like me. Have you heard of Deep Thoughts before by Jack Handey?
No.
Yeah.
You should. I'm not going to go through all of it, but you should look it up. It was an SNL, I think, generated at the time. Maybe the dude was doing it before, but I first saw it on SNL, and it's a kind of a non sequitur. It's really calm and collected and serene, and then he just hits you with a punchline at the end of this deep thought that you think is going to be deep, but it's really something weird.
It's really not.
It's really not.
It's really not.
But it's funny, and so it's a fun throwback to Deep Thoughts. So Deep Thoughts with Marie Wiese.
Thank you both for having very different perspectives on two very different parts of that blog post. Back last year when we launched that newsletter, we had some name that was pretty generic, and I said, "Oh, we should call this Deep Thoughts." And the person on my team who I partner with to do a lot of content development is a younger person, and said, "Thank you, Bobby, for pointing that out." Said to me, "I don't know what that is," and I said, "Oh, well, Google it. Google it on YouTube.
It's the only thing you can do. You got to Google
and
it.
Watch some Deep Thoughts with Jack Handey." So I thought it was funny, and I always love to add a spice of humor into things because I thought it would lend itself well to the type of content we were producing and what we wanted to talk about. And then when we did this most recent newsletter about your marketing horoscope and bringing in that idea of the different parts of the horoscope and how that related back to what you would want in your mix, we definitely wanted to kind of do a bit of a mashup of generations who would have understood Deep Thoughts and would have very much understood what a marketing horoscope was. And the thing that we wanted to drive home is that there's two parts to it that I think are really interesting. In 2022 and 2023, we did a lot of testing with clients, and we really helped a lot of tech companies execute various tactics, and we saw what was working and what wasn't working in a post-pandemic world. And this comes back to this point about how you're building relationships, how you're actually connecting with people. People want to buy from people. They don't buy from companies. They don't buy a product. They buy people behind that product and service, particularly on the business to business side. And when it comes to technology, they're buying something complicated. And they're hoping that somebody's going to walk them through why they need it. But oftentimes as human beings, we're rushed, we run out of time, we don't have the time or energy that we'd want to put to something. So we're hoping that an organization or a company can guide us as best as they can to take us through the beginning of that sales step or that sales strategy. And in a self-serve way, allow people to understand what the value is of that product or service to them directly. And so to do that, you really need to break it down first by understanding the relationship. And then second, understand the content that they need when they need it to engage that relationship. And then to build that relationship. And I heard a psychologist say one time, and I couldn't agree with this statement more. When you think about it in our lives as human beings, we're either starting a relationship, managing a relationship, or ending a relationship.
Yeah.
There's 3 stages. And the marketer's biggest challenge is how to start a relationship and how to start to manage a relationship. That's where things like marketing automation come into play. That's where understanding buying triggers is so important, and attributable data points that we can use to see if we achieved our goal or not. That's all become a reality now with marketing automation. My concern about AI is that we are going to try to cut corners and start to use AI to fill in the blanks on things when we don't completely understand what those blanks are because of the human nature of those relationships. And so that's really what the article was trying to show to people is these are the things you're going to have to consider this year. And even though we've, like I say, all become digital natives overnight, sometimes that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to put ourselves in situations with the right content at the right time. So we've just recently launched a thing called the growth formula. And it's a bit of a heuristic that we developed that said, we know these are the components of a plan that will help you grow revenue because we've tested it. We know this works. And at the end of the day, it comes down to really understanding the people that you're selling to and making that content available. And that's what we were trying to point out in the article as far as the 3 different types of horoscopes you're going to need for this year.
Yeah. I love the recurring theme still in all this is there's still the human element. And even just to step back a little bit too, to talk about personality, like, you've got your colors. I've embraced purple, and we were just talking about what purple means to us and trying to define that as a company initiative, because we have company, mission statement or what have you, or philosophies, and we're trying to incorporate that into the purple brand so that we can let people understand. And that's part of that process is, I think, attracting folks, clients, customers, friends in the IZ world, whatever it is allowing that personality to show. I'd love to hear your thoughts on, like, folks, this is kind of stepping into a bit of a different area, but just again, it lends to allowing your personality to show. If you're writing a resume, even like, olden days, you'd write a resume and it was very strict and businesslike. And at some point in my own life, I just broke that pattern because I figured at the end of the day, I am who I am. So if I don't let you see my personality in the resume and in an interview, then I'm going to have to come and put this crazy facade on every day, or you may end up not liking me because I haven't shown you the real me. So in the same sense, that's kind of like in marketing, I would think it's the same way. As Ellipse or as Marie, we've got to show a bit of our real selves, constantly, so that people are drawn to that. And I think that goes a long way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, we always talk about at Marketing Copilot, we always talk about the 3 different categories that we need to be working on as marketers. And the first is awareness. And I think what you're talking about very much falls into the awareness category of attracting people to us, maybe because of our personality. Mm-hmm. And I also teach a course at the University of Toronto, and part of the course I teach is on personal branding. And that idea that you need to be memorable, you need to stand for something, and you have to have gravitas behind that brand. And oftentimes, companies are so busy trying to, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but they're so busy trying to get somebody to think a certain thing or think a certain way that they miss the opportunity to supply that idea of being memorable and having gravitas. And when I say gravitas, I can go on so many tech websites right now and they claim things and they don't back it up with proof points or data
Yeah.
that speaks to buyer problems or buyer triggers. And that's where I think people are failing in marketing. And so I do think personal branding and standing for something is important, but having gravitas and proof points and data points to point out why you're good at that
It goes
is
back to
really
your point on the class clown or the person standing up and making all the noise in the class and not really having anything later to back it up, no friendships, no deep relationships, that they were just out there screaming and that's what they did, as opposed to, hey, I get a little attention, but also here's why.
So what I tell clients about branding and having a personality is it's important to be memorable, but at the end of the day, if it's about you and not about the customer, it's not going to work.
Mm.
And really being able to be about the customer and take people from that awareness to that consideration point and then to the conversion point, and those being the three most important categories is awareness, consideration, conversion. And conversion doesn't necessarily mean they've bought your product. It just means they're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And they're willing to listen to what you have to say because your content and the consideration category struck a chord. It resonated with them around the problems or the things that you can help solve. And I find that we're very good at the awareness part because it's easy to do. It's easy to make noise.
Yeah.
It's much harder to engage and keep a conversation going with relevant content. And that's where I think marketing needs to not just become memorable, but they need to add the gravitas to what is being discussed so that they can prove they're the best company and best situated to solve the problem for someone. You know, when you go to write a check for somebody for something, even in your personal life or in your professional life, you want to know exactly what you're getting for that money and you want to know exactly how it's going to help you. And so many companies fall short of having that conversation, particularly software companies and tech companies, because they all want to say, okay, well, sit down and tell me what your problem is and I'll prescribe something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've become savvy as buyers. We don't necessarily want to sit down and tell you our problems. We want you to have an understanding of what my problem might be and tell me how you're going to solve it. I don't have time to sit and educate you about my business.
Yeah.
So that's where things like buyer personas and triggers and all those things become so important in marketing. And a lot of people skip over that step and don't bother to take the time to do it.
We talked in Scottsdale a lot about the shifting nature of how buyers are doing more research, that's grown exponentially and out there doing that, hey, I'm 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of you from where it used to be, 5 years ago or so, where, yeah, I needed you to tell me more, like you said. Now I've learned a lot. Now I'm just needing some reinforcement, some additives at this point, because I've already done a lot of research on my own. And so that's important to your marketing efforts too, because your website should be giving out more information for people who are, if you get to a website, it just says, the software is great and so are we, and then that's all they've got. Then it's like, okay. You didn't really give me anything to pull from, so I can learn a little bit about why the software is great, why your company is great,
and why you. Why should I choose you?
And
I
why
tell you,
should you choose me?
this is where AI is going to do people in. I have a client who sells Dynamics CRM, and they're very good at it. They've been very good at it for a long time. So when we rebuilt their website and had a lead magnet offer, the offer was around how to properly scope a CRM project. And 18 months ago, when we started this project with this client, it got lots of downloads and people were really trying to understand, how do I properly scope a CRM project, especially if I'm going to use Dynamics 365. And now we've gotten to the point where that information is easily available in ChatGPT. Anybody with ChatGPT can search, how do I scope a CRM project? And all the information spews out.
Yeah.
So guess what? We have to be a lot smarter at taking that next step and saying, here's another thing you might want to consider, or here's what you might want to do. Because in the relationship building part of the exercise, don't tell me something I already know. That's the fastest way to tick somebody off, or, and that's where, again, you have to dig into that. What do they need to know? How am I going to tell them this?
Yeah.
And that's where marketers have to work a lot harder today.
I agree. I mean, like, just thinking about your point on on educating the user, you get into a meeting, and I wonder too, like, one of the things that we fight as a battle is, and it maybe it's starting to change. We'll see in the bigger ERP space, because that's where we operate. ERP, F&O implementations. That a lot of times companies are still, we're getting a lot of we just need a quick estimate. Can you just give us a quick estimate? And our mantra is, we could, but you're not going to, at the end of the day, it's not going to serve your purpose. We would prefer to do what you're saying is, we have a tried and true methodology that has never failed us in any implementation. And if you allow us to do this, it may take a little bit more time, but you're going to do it anyway, because if you do a project, you're going to get to this point of this type of evaluation, and we'd love to help you walk through and understand it, now. And so we fight pretty hard to get our value prop in that conversation, to show that point of, yeah, you could look at ChatGPT and ask them how to implement ERP, and you're going to get some boxed answer, but it's a boxed answer at the end of the day. And if you execute that, you're going to end up in a pretty bad place. Like, I'm picturing a funny video that, where the person does ChatGPT and implement ERP, and then the next frame is just a big fire out of the building, and people running, screaming because it didn't work. And then, maybe think about a different way. Increase your chances of survival and success.
And let's be honest, there's lots of people implementing ERP these days. There's lots of different products you can use. There's lots of different tools you can use.
Yeah.
Your opportunity in the marketplace is to tell people why they should choose you.
Yep.
And the only way you can do that is to really understand your buyer. There's no shortcut here. I wish there was. There isn't.
Is it hard? Because now you still have people, probably, obviously I'm in my 50s, people in my age, people, all these different generations. Are they all kind of converging, or what's the landscape like, as far as, like, or is it really, I've got to think about each of these?
I think it's a mix of all of those things. And, I still work with older people who are CFOs or CIOs or CEOs, and they understand it's changing. People who influence decision making are very different than they were even 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And you've got to factor all of this in. And, I laugh because, a few years back, we were doing an assignment for a very large insurance company. And there was a place where you would log in on their portal, and there was a link to connect to them on Facebook there on the link into the portal. I said, why do you have this here? They said, well, isn't that what everybody does these days? Shouldn't everybody have a link to Facebook on their website? And I said, yeah, but not on the login. How many people connect with you on Facebook when they're logging into your product? Oh, no one. We haven't captured any traffic. Then why is this here? Don't do this. Right? And there's these crazy things that people do because they think that's what they should be doing.
Right.
So I think the companies that I've seen really be successful are the ones who have really great leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that leadership understands that there's, different approaches in the world today. And that leadership is willing to be brave enough to listen to the various audiences that they know they have to serve, and to hopefully put a strategy forward that works.
Yeah. Key, know your foundation and know your brand, and marry those two together, and try not to, like, if you just go off and like, oh, I saw somebody did TikTok today, I better do TikTok. When you don't know TikTok and it doesn't necessarily suit your market, you just did it because you thought it was the right thing to do. Like you said, I'm going to put TikTok on my the very first thing you see when it doesn't suit your market or your audience. So knowing your audience and knowing your own foundational, values is important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even before we were all digital natives, when I wrote the book, You Can't Be Everywhere, one of the chapters is don't waste time on social media. And it was meant as a double entendre, is that people waste time.
Yeah.
But then they're also wasting the opportunity because they're not where they should be, and they're not spending time and doing a good job in the one location that matters.
Yeah.
And instead they've got Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn. They've got all these different things. Do you remember when Google had their wonderful social media app? And
I'm
that
trying to remember it. No.
logo was on there. Oh yes, Google had a social, and I was seeing all these logos, and
Yeah.
I finally said to one organization, Google disbanded their social media app. Why have you still got that logo there? And just this trying to be everywhere doesn't
So
work.
you're saying we should shut down our MySpace account because we get a lot of leads from MySpace, Marie.
Do you?
No.
Really? That could be a case study if you do. If the answer is
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Let's look into that.
Yeah. So, we've hit interesting times, and they're
Yeah.
only going to become more and more interesting as things like AI start to permeate how we do things. And we create technology because we're looking for economies of scale and economies of time saving. And, at the end of the day, things get created for only one of two reasons. Somebody's trying to save time, or they're trying to save money. And understanding where you fall in that landscape is really important. But if we're just creating things for the sake of saving time, once we get used to that, a lot of things drop off that we should be spending time and energy on.
Mm.
And that's why we're bringing all of our clients back to the idea of how are you actually building relationships in your business?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's the relationships that are going to serve you well.
Yeah.
I think it's a great spot to end. I mean, it's been
Yeah.
it's been a fascinating conversation. I love talking AI. I mean, I'm kind of a hybrid of, Nut and, Savannah as well. We love the AI. We love, the technical side of it and the marketing piece. So it's just a swirl of fun topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been fun. Marie, thanks for joining us. And you both will be in in Tampa next week. So
Yeah.
if anyone else is there, make sure to hit these two up while you're there.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. It's packed. It's sold out. So I don't know what the capacity was, but it's somewhere in the couple hundred people for a regional event. That's pretty good. It's the best I've seen at any regional I've been to, in the last couple of years.
Well, Bobby, that's because you and I are there.
That's what I'm saying. People keep saying what happens. Like the minute they put our names out there, it was like all of a sudden it was sold out. Is that a coincidence? I think not.
Who knew?
I know. And Marie, we'll put all your information in the link when we post this. And really appreciate having you on, and look forward again to having you back when your book comes out later in the year. I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, I love doing podcasts. I can't wait for the book to come out. We're very excited about it, and it's going to be fantastic. So stay tuned.
Yep.
Well, thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Well, thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was really good.
And I think we're up on time, so we'll let you drop because I know we had you for 45 minutes, so we'll let you go on time here. And I'll look forward to see you in Tampa. Hopefully we can get a minute to chat there too.
We definitely will. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I love doing podcasts. So thanks so much.
Yeah, me too. Yep. Take care.
Okay. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.